Hello, welcome to Balanced Health. I'm Shirley Rose and this is Joe Costello. You know, for years the U.S. Department of Agriculture has published and periodically revised its food pyramid. According to its website, you can use the pyramid as a guide for steps to a healthier you. But does following the USDA food pyramid really work? We'll tackle that question today, and by the end of the show, Joe will have given us all some good tips on how to properly frame the foundation of a healthy, balanced diet. Let's talk about the food pyramid for a minute, Joe. It's the government has revised it, but is that? Can you walk us through it? And I think we're going to have a graphic. Can you walk us through it as it presently is?
Well, some people might remember it as, well, first of all, they revised it. And anytime there's revisions, you always ask yourself the question, I thought it was right the first time.
Exactly. I want to interrupt you real quick. Do you think that, and I've heard this, I've read this recently, that actually the government kind of devised the food pyramid because, you know, of special interest groups like the dairy farmers, or you really think that was?
I think there's no question that happened, but I don't think it was a direct cause and effect. I don't think the agricultural organization called the FDA and said, you know, we'll make a $50 million campaign to the next president if you'll do this.
Yeah.
But I do think that their resources allowed them to put out so much information, you know, to the government, spinning their own information, of course, that the government, you know, you throw enough spaghetti on the wall, some's going to stick, right?
So the government was kind of convinced that this was actually
that they were inundated with this. Now, if you remember the old food pyramid, it was a pyramid, and it had pictures of grains and fats and how many servings of this and how many servings of that. Now they it's a little techier looking. They have like the stick figure person running up, and I guess we're going to have this on the screen here in a minute, but they have this like stick figure person running up the side of the pyramid, and then they have colors. And each color represents fats, oils, grains, protein, and you know, the whiter the color, the more of it you're supposed to have. Well, of course, the first thing that stares out at me, Shirley, is how much they want you to eat grains. And we joked off here, I think that guy's running up the side of that pyramid because he has to run off all the fat that he just took in his body by eating grains.
And it represents that you need exercise along with a good diet. That's
I think that's what they will tell you represent, but that's what I got out of it. But one of the things that bothers me about it, there's a couple things. Here's the first thing that glares at me. This is what they have broken down. I'm just reading the words. And tell me what this means to you. You're just a layperson here, right? 3 cups of dairy. What does 3 cups of dairy mean to you?
It means a lot of milk and cheese.
Okay, but how do you measure that? Now, you're going to take this and you're going to pragmatically apply
that sounds like a lot of dairy,
life.
first of all.
But even still, what does 3 cups mean? Does that mean you take a piece of cheese and shove it into a cup until the 8-ounce thing's full and say that's a cup of cheese? That's very ambiguous.
Well, can I just say that would be a lot of cheese. That would be like a whole pizza.
It would be a lot of cheese. It would be a lot of milk, which some people shouldn't be touching at all, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Another thing is 5 ounces of meat and beans. Now, if you've ever been to a restaurant and you order a petite filet, it's a pretty small piece of meat. That's usually a 7 or 8 ounce piece of meat.
Maybe 5.
So, yeah, that would be a real petite filet.
Yes.
So 5 ounces of meats and beans is very ambiguous. So I think
it's not only ambiguous, it's little.
Oh yeah,
small.
well that's beside the point.
It's not enough, right?
I mean, when I look at this here and I add this up, this is probably for, say, a 50-year-old female, this is probably a 1,700 calorie a day diet, which is doable. But I certainly wouldn't break it down this way. Here's one I like the most: 130 discretionary calories.
Yeah, what is that? That's for dessert?
Well, not 100, not 150 or 200. No rounded number.
130.
130. As if you go to 138, the world's over. 122, you got another 8 calories to spare.
I read that and I'm like, is that like one big piece of cake or what? Probably not. That would be more like 300 calories. What is that?
Exactly. So I think the user-friendly application of the pyramid is difficult. But I think the broad-based assumptions are even worse. We're going to talk more about a couple of the reasons why in a minute here. But the broad-based assumptions of, because the agricultural community has given information about grains being healthy, that grains are healthy to eat. And the fact of the matter is, Shirley, for one person, grains could be the most toxic thing they could put in their body. The next person can tolerate them well. The next person can tolerate them, you know, with some moderation. And I don't want to be trite today and say that moderation in all things is the way to go, because that's just too... our viewers walk away with that, and what have they really gained? We want to get into more specifics.
And we are going to get into more specifics about metabolic typing and things like that. So what about numbers of servings? I mean, do you think that, well, first of all, they're hard to judge, right, just from what the pyramid has said. You know, like Like 130 calories, for instance. I mean, would there be an easier way? Could you say it would be better to say 5 servings of fruits and vegetables, or how would you think it would be a better way to do it?
I mean, the pyramid kind of does say that, but I would say this. You know, metabolic typing, which you mentioned just a minute ago, what it basically says is this, that for one person, more protein and fat in their diet is going to be healthier for them. For their weight control, for their energy,
and they would need way more than 5 ounces, right?
They would eat way more than 5 ounces. For the other person, it's just the opposite. They need to eat fat and meat very sparingly. And then you have those people in the middle that we call mixed types. The other type, by the way, we call carbohydrate types. And so the answer to your question is, if you are a protein type, and so you should be eating more protein and fats, then on your plate, that's what you want proportionate. So you would have, let's say, a meat or a bison or poultry or something like that, and then you would have a serving of vegetables, because remember, even in the world of carbohydrates, and this is one of the things that the pyramid just does not even begin to explain, carbohydrates, the world of carbohydrates is extremely vast. It's too generalized to say good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates. One thing the viewer can always remember is anytime a carbohydrate is from a dark green leafy vegetable, that's the best kind of carbohydrate you have. It's going to metabolize, or it's going to oxidize slowly in the body. Now that seems like an oxymoron, because people often confuse slow oxidation with slow metabolism.
Which is not so good.
No, it's just the opposite. Oxidation of a calorie, you want the slower it happens, the more your body utilizes the calorie for energy, and the less it utilizes it for fat storage. Does that make sense? So we want our body to be using calories for energy and not to store fat. Well, for a protein type, if he's stuffing him or herself with grains all day and carbohydrates that are not from dark green leafy vegetables, in that person's metabolism, they're going to turn that into basically sugar water in their bloodstream in no time. So instead of that calorie burning slowly or oxidizing slowly and being used for energy, it becomes basically a fat storage tank. If we move over to the animal kingdom and we look at, say, the way a horse is built, or say the way a tiger's built, let's use a tiger, and then say the way that an ape is built, okay? Tigers are built predominantly, they're obviously very lean and muscular, okay?
And they're carnivores.
And they're carnivores.
Eat meat.
And apes are primarily herbivores, although they're truly omnivores because they eat ants and bugs, you know, and they do get protein from the animal kingdom per se. But look at the difference in their builds. Or look at the difference in the build of, say, an elephant. Now, that's the way God designed them to be. They live well that way. But you can see that they eat different things, and yet for them, that's the healthy way to go. What happens with too many people is they're protein types, and they read about grains, you know, eating all these grains, or they read this stuff and they eat too much fruit, especially sugary fruit. And next thing you know, they're packing the pounds on because those calories are being stored as fat instead of utilized for energy.
Which may be the reason there's so many of the Americans are obese, and that's a whole other discussion. But this is a great discussion, but it's time to take a quick break. And when we return, we'll be talking in depth about metabolic typing, and Joe will give us each some guidelines on how to build a better diet. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Balanced Health.